One of the crucial institutions that makes up what I call the deep state behind the deep state, that's why the show's called Behind the Deep State, by the way, with Alex Newman, that's me, is the Trilateral Commission. So this is kind of like a council on foreign relations, but even more elitist, even more aristocratic, if you will. So this is an organization that was formed in the 1970s, actually in 1973, by David Rockefeller. David Rockefeller, of course, was one of the kingpins of the deep state. He wrote in his own book, in his memoirs on page 405, that some people even accuse me of conspiring together with internationalists against the best interests of our country to form a one world political and economic system. And if that's the charge, I stand guilty and I'm proud of it. So this is a guy who brags about being a conspirator against the best interests of his own nation to form a one world order. To his credit, there's some real honesty there, and I sure appreciate his honesty. He's now passed on, but he did so much damage to the cause of freedom, to the United States, and one of the tentacles that he left behind was this Trilateral Commission. So in the 1970s, he read a book that was written by Zbigniew Brzezinski. Now, Zbigniew Brzezinski, for those of you who don't know, he was a national security advisor to President Jimmy Carter and served in a lot of very important roles. He was also a professor. And he wrote this book called Between Two Ages, America's Role in the Technotronic Era. To kind of summarize it very briefly, this 1970 book, he claims that America is obsolete. Right, this whole concept of America is obsolete, and he recognized some problems with the Soviet Union, but he comes across as very pro-Marxist. Here's a quote from his book: "It says Marxism represents a further vital and creative stage in the maturing of man's universal vision. Marxism is simultaneously a victory of the external active man over the inner passive man, and a victory of reason over belief. It stresses man's capacity to shape his material destiny, finite and defined as man's only reality, and it postulates the absolute capacity of man to truly understand his reality as a point of departure for his active endeavors to shape it. To a greater extent than any previous mode of political thinking, Marxism puts a premium on the systematic and rigorous examination of material reality and on guides to action derived from that examination." So, if you ask me, that sounds a whole lot like an endorsement of Marxism, a satanic, evil, brutal ideology that has been responsible for the murder of hundreds of millions of people just in the last 100 years. Now, if you think that represents the next evolution in mankind's consciousness, I think you have a real problem. One of the best exposés of the Trilateral Commission was actually written by two people I respect tremendously. One is a good friend of mine, Patrick Wood. The other is one of America's premier historians, the late Anthony Sutton over at Stanford University. Again, one of America's premier historians. And as you watch this program, Behind the Deep State with Alex Newman, you'll see we constantly refer to his work because he really did dig where others were afraid to dig. He exposed so much. So in this book they put out, Patrick Wood and Anthony Sutton, called Trilaterals Over Washington. They quote from a lot of the group's own documents and things. And the Trilateral Commission has a website, by the way. You can go research them on their own website if you'd like. They say that the goal of the Trilateral Commission is, to quote the Trilateral Commission, a new international economic order. Patrick Wood later recognized this as technocracy, right? That's what Zbigniew Brzezinski was promoting in his book, America's Role in the Technotronic Age. We're promoting technocracy. It's a system of government where you don't really use elected representatives and you don't really have self-government. You have so-called experts, scientists, engineers, bureaucrats deciding how to organize the economy, deciding where people ought to work, what they ought to do, how they ought to think, and so on. So the goal of this new international economic order pursued by the Trilateral Commission was a total reshaping of the global economy, centralized control in some sort of global government. And many of the objectives of this new international economic order have actually been enshrined into international agreements like UN Agenda 21, like UN Agenda 2030. So, the Trilateral Commission I mentioned that the Trilateral Commission is similar in some ways to the Council on Foreign Relations. The Council on Foreign Relations is kind of the key deep state outpost in the United States, if you will. The Trilateral Commission is much more exclusive, so they have much fewer members. The CFR has thousands. The Trilateral Commission has hundreds at most, and they come from not just the United States, but also from Japan, from Canada, and from Europe. And the thinking was you would use these three kind of powers, Western Europe, North America, and Japan, to help build the foundation for this world government. And Zbigniew Brzezinski, the guy who gave the ideas for the Trilateral Commission, he actually was appointed one of the early leaders of the Trilateral Commission by David Rockefeller. He summed up his agenda, I think, very, very concisely. He said, to sum up, though the objective of shaping a community of developed nations is less ambitious than the goal of world government, it is more attainable. It is more ambitious than the concept of an Atlantic community, but historically more relevant to the new spatial revolution. Though cognizant of present divisions between communist and non-communist nations, it attempts to create a framework for international affairs, not by exploiting these divisions, but rather by striving to preserve and create openings for eventual reconciliation. So they were talking about merging the so-called free world with the communist world, with the Soviet Union. And this came through loud and clear in his own statement. So in 1995, Zbigniew Brzezinski spoke at the State of the World Forum. This was convened by the former brutal dictator of the Soviet Union, Mikhail Gorbachev, backed also by the Rockefellers, I'm sure you'll be surprised to know, and other establishment deep state forces in the West. And Zbigniew Brzezinski, up on stage, said, "We do not have a new world order. We cannot leap into a world government in one quick step. In brief, the precondition for eventual globalization, genuine globalization, aka globalism, is progressive regionalization, because thereby we move toward larger, more stable, more cooperative units." And so we here at Behind the Deep State have been talking about this for a long time. If you want to understand the process to building this new world order, they've been telling us for many years. Henry Kissinger told us most recently in his book, World Order, create regional orders like the European Union, the African Union, the Union of South American States, the Eurasian Union, eventually a North American Union, and then merge those all together into a global system. And the Trilateral Commission is extremely influential. Zbigniew Brzezinski himself noted in his memoirs that all the key foreign policy decision makers of the Carter administration had previously served in the Trilateral Commission. And this continued all the way through to Obama. Obama called Zbigniew Brzezinski one of the most outstanding thinkers, right? We also have Barry Goldwater, the Republican candidate for president back in 1964. He said in his book, Goldwater, by Barry M. Goldwater with Jack Casserly, he said, "In my view, the Trilateral Commission represents a skillful, coordinated effort to seize control and consolidate the four centers of power: political, monetary, intellectual, and ecclesiastical." So pay attention to what he's saying here, guys. What the Trilaterals truly intend is the creation of a worldwide economic power superior to the political governments of the nation-states involved. As managers and creators of the system, they will rule the future. So that is the agenda, guys. These Trilateral Commission people are working with people in high places in Japan, people in Canada, in America, in Western Europe, to merge the entire world under regional governments and then eventually a global government. Actually, a number of Trilateral Commission operatives did manage to get into the Trump administration. Dina Habib Powell, who served as Deputy National Security Advisor for a time, was one of those people. So we're not out of the woods yet. But what we need to do to stop these people is to expose them, right? So like this video, share this video, subscribe to the New Americans YouTube channel, subscribe to our magazine, go to thenewamerican.com and help us get the word out. Because once the American people realize what these trilateral deep state Looney Tunes are up to, the whole little agenda can come crashing down. This is Behind the Deep State. I'm your host, Alex Newman. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more next week. Thank you, and God bless.